Honestly, as a longtime Browns fan, I've kind of been desensitized to how important off seasons can be to a team. Normally, at this time of the year, as a Browns fan, we normally go into the off season with a kind of carefree, nothing to lose attitude. But this year's different. This year, the Browns go into the off season with something to lose because the Browns have a lot of decisions that if they don't get right, they can blow their Super Bowl window. From a salary cap perspective, the Browns have the next 3 to 4 years to win a Super Bowl because that's when Baker Mayfield and Myles Garrett would be on their rookie deal. And as teams like the Ravens and the Seahawks, who won their Super Bowls when their quarterback was on their rookie deal and has since struggled to contend since signing their quarterback to a more franchise deal, have showed is that you really got to make it in that window if you want to win a Super Bowl. This is new territory for Browns fans because me just saying the Cleveland Browns Super Bowl window in a non-ironic, completely 100% serious manner is just crazy to me. But it's absolutely the truth. The Browns have a Super Bowl window and it's coming. And we need to capitalize on it. And one of the things that they need to get right is this head coaching decision. Because unlike a bad free agency signing or a missed draft pick, a bad coaching hire will set you back 2 to 3 years. And by the time that's over with, you're going to have to re-sign Baker Mayfield to a big deal. You're definitely going to have to re-sign Myles Garrett. Then what? How are you going to contend now? And then it becomes even harder to contend. Now, sure, there are guys like Tom Brady, guys like Drew Brees, who are not on their rookie deals, obviously, who still find a way to contend. But also, those are guys who have taken pay cuts in order to make that happen. Now, when it comes to the coaching search, here are some really good things to think about. John Dorsey's leading it. He did a fantastic job overhauling this roster. One would think that he might be able to find a head coach too. And I think a lot of people right now just trust the decision that John Dorsey's going to make. Unless he hires somebody that we don't like, then we're just going to blame it on Jimmy Haslam. The good thing is that the market for coaches this year is pretty deep. You have a lot of experienced guys with great things on their resumes. You might have 2 guys with Super Bowls on their resumes available. You also have a good amount of unproven coordinator or college guys that are very intriguing, to say the least. The only thing that worries me is that John Dorsey has never hired a head coach in his long career. And now we're asking him to not only pick a head coach, but to hit a home run on his first try. Because a bad hire here can impact the Browns franchise for the better part of a decade. This is a serious decision. And since this coaching decision is so important, I found it important as a Browns fan to do a deep 3-part series. Now to explain the parts, I kind of have to explain how coaches are kind of categorized in the job search. There's the first category, which is the retread. The guy who has had a head coaching job before, has had head coaching experience, but for whatever reason, he was fired. Famous coaches in the NFL right now who are retreads are Bill Belichick, Andy Reid. Those are guys who have worked out. Coaches that didn't work out that were retreads, well, there's Hugh Jackson. He was a retread. And then there's this category of unproven coordinator / college guy. And obviously the big names this year is going to be the Lincoln Rileys, the Matt Campbells. When you go with that one, the risk and reward is even bigger because you can roll the dice and you might get a Sean McVay or you might get a Matt Nagy. But you can also roll the dice and get a Ron Marinelli or just another guy who just plain sucks. Now, since this is such a big decision, what I want to do with Worst Take for the next 3 weeks is do a 3-part series about the head coaching candidates and who the Browns should hire. I want to involve your voice in the comment section down below. Tell me who you want. So in the first part, we're going to be going over the retread candidates. In the second part, we're going to go over the unproven candidates. And in the third part, we're going to go over what you guys had to say and who I think the next head coaching candidate should be. So if you don't want to miss any of these parts, make sure you subscribe, and not only subscribe, but hit the notification bell right next to it so you can be notified every time I upload a video. The first candidate we're going to break down the pros and cons is the media darling of 2018/2019. That's going to be Josh McDaniels. Now, here are some of the pros about Josh McDaniels. He's a local guy. He's from the area. I think he went to Canton McKinley or one of those schools down the Canton area. So he knows this area, grew up a Browns fan, knows the Browns, knows the history. It's actually good. The second thing I would count as a con for Josh McDaniels is that the Patriots actually thought high enough of him to dissuade him to taking a head coaching job. They let Matt Patricia just go to Detroit. They did not let Josh McDaniels just walk on to Indianapolis. They made him a little bit of a deal. I think that says a lot about what Bill Belichick thinks of Josh McDaniels. And with that, with the endorsement of Bill Belichick, who is thought of as one of the greatest head coaches of all time, a lot of people praise Josh McDaniels for having one of the greatest football minds in the NFL right now. Now, I will warn you that moniker in the Browns hasn't always worked out, because Eric Mangini was thought of as that, and that went bad, and then Hugh Jackson was thought of that. And if you want to rewind it, when the Browns hired Bill Belichick the first time in the 90s, that was kind of what was said about Bill Belichick. So be careful with that moniker. Really means nothing, but, you know, people say it, so it's a pro, I guess. Obviously, you could tell by the tone, I'm not a big fan of bringing Josh McDaniels here. I'll just go out and say it. Spoiler alert. Josh McDaniels is not going to be who I want the Browns to hire. Here are some of the reasons why. The Patriot way has not worked in Cleveland the last 3 times you've tried to do it. When Eric Mangini was here, didn't work. When Romeo Crennel was here, didn't work. When Bill freaking Belichick was here, didn't work. And he created the Patriot way. I don't have a lot of confidence in somebody who ain't even Bill Belichick doing the Belichick system in Cleveland and it working, because it just hasn't. Even with the coaching staff that had Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, Mark D'Antonio, all these dudes on there, didn't work. That system does not work anywhere outside of New England, and there's a reason. Number 2, just like Hugh Jackson ended badly in Oakland, it ended terribly in Denver for Josh McDaniels. He was immature. Then he does the thing with the Colts last year, which was immature. This isn't a guy who sounds like he's grown from that experience. I don't know if that's a dude, after having Hugh Jackson in your building the last 3 years, that you want to just bring in at this critical time and rely on. So for me, at the end of the day, if Bill Belichick didn't work, I don't really have a lot of faith in any baby Bill working out. Okay, so the next candidate we're going to cover here is John Harbaugh. Now, John Harbaugh has a lot of obvious pros. He has a great record. He has a Super Bowl championship, and he's done it without an elite quarterback in Joe Flacco. But let's dig deeper into some of his pros. So with John Harbaugh's credentials, Super Bowl champion, career-winning record, comes instant credibility for the Browns. Now, that's not as important as it used to be before the Browns had a quarterback. But still, it does matter in free agency. It does matter when it comes to how people on the team view the team, how people who aren't on the team view the team. It matters about how much respect this team gets. Who else is better to deal with a brash, cocky, confident, will tell you how he feels to your face kind of quarterback like Baker Mayfield than the guy who spent his whole life being the younger brother to Jim Harbaugh? The third pro is that he is extremely familiar with the division. There's only 2 more coaches who have more experience, and they happen to be some of the most tenured coaches in Marvin Lewis and in Mike Tomlin. This helps when you want to keep continuity in the division. This helps with knowing what kind of players work in this division. It just helps knowing who you can contend with. I think it's important, but I think too much gets made of. Yes, familiarity with the division is important, but it doesn't matter if you're familiar with the division and you're Hugh Jackson. If you suck, you suck. So I think it's not that important of a trait, but it is something that's good there when you're talking about somebody who is proven in this field. The fourth pro is that John Harbaugh won his only Super Bowl off the back of a high-powered Ravens offense led by Joe Flacco. And that's impressive. Not saying anything against Joe Flacco, but Joe Flacco isn't Tom Brady. He isn't Drew Brees. He isn't even really Andrew Luck. So to build a Super Bowl winning offense off the back of a guy who's kind of pretty impressive. I would love to see what he could do with somebody like Mayfield. But there are a lot of negatives to John Harbaugh that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, and I'm going to bring them up. Since that Super Bowl winning year in 2012, there has been no creativity. Even now with what they're doing with Lamar Jackson. Yeah, Lamar Jackson's running the ball, but what they're doing isn't creative. This is stuff that's been on Madden for like 5 years. They're playing the same football they played in 2012. That's concerning. And it's even more concerning when you look at that this team since 2015 has taken a serious dip in quality. They aren't the same Ravens you remember. In the last 4 years, the Ravens have been a below 500 team, posting a win percentage of only 484. The thing that makes this more concerning than a dip that somebody I'm going to talk about later and Mike McCarthy has is that this dip doesn't really coincide itself with an injury to an important position like quarterback. Joe Flacco's been relatively healthy the last 4 years, and this team has still continued to dip down. Now, maybe the roster's that bad and they're getting the best out of it, or maybe his offense hasn't changed much since he's won that Super Bowl and teams have caught up to it. Either way, there's a huge amount of concern with that dip in 4 years. I mean, that's a large sample size. I think if you're the Browns, you should look at him through that lens rather than looking at what he did in 2012, because it's about what he's going to do in the future. And right now, his projection is pointing way down. So if you're the Browns, the question you have to ask yourself, is this more of a product of the rosters John Harbaugh was working with, just taking a dramatic dip in quality in the last 4 years? Or is this a product of staleness on offensive concepts, staleness on defensive concepts, just not great coaching? You got to figure that out, because that's a serious concern if he becomes available. Number 3, a guy very similar to John Harbaugh on a resume standpoint. They both have a Super Bowl victory. Mike McCarthy has a better record overall than John Harbaugh, but he's had the much better quarterback to play with than John Harbaugh. And that guy is somebody we know is going to be available in Mike McCarthy. Now, obviously, just like John Harbaugh, his career record and his Super Bowl championship, it's going to bring instant credibility to the Browns. It's going to make the Browns seem really credible. It's going to make the Browns look like the Packers. One thing he's dealt with that John Harbaugh hasn't, because honestly, you're going to kind of directly compare these two. John Harbaugh never dealt with a superstar quarterback. Now, Joe Flacco might think he's a superstar quarterback, but he's not a superstar quarterback. With Baker Mayfield, what you feel and what you would want to believe in if you're the coach taking the job is that, you know, this guy's going to be somebody who's going to be a superstar in this league. He has the personality for it. He has the play for it. He's relatable. He is going to really enamor a lot of people. He's going to have a large following. That kind of experience with Aaron Rodgers is kind of something that's important. Now, here's one of the more important distinctions that I see between John Harbaugh and Mike McCarthy. For whatever reason, publicly, I think that John Harbaugh's stock is going up and Mike McCarthy's stock is going down, which is very questionable to me. Because if you look at the results on the field, it should make you question how bad you want John Harbaugh again. Because if you look at Mike McCarthy, when Mike McCarthy has a healthy Aaron Rodgers, he's never been below 500. The 1 year he's been under 500 with a full season is when Aaron Rodgers was completely unhealthy last year. He had to go out and try to win games with Brett Hundley, somebody who the Packers thought was so good at quarterback, they traded their starting corner and first-round pick in Demarius Randall for Deshaun Kaiser. They looked at Brett Hundley, and then they looked at Deshaun Kaiser and all of his red zone interceptions and turnovers, and they still said, hey, I'd rather have Kaiser. Hell, I'd rather give up a starter to get Kaiser than to go out with Hundley again if Aaron Rodgers gets injured. And you know what? With Brett Hundley, Mike McCarthy still went 7-9. That ain't bad for somebody who's worse than Deshaun Kaiser, the guy who started on an 0-16 team last year. So when you look at Mike McCarthy's trend down, it's kind of directly related to the health of his starting quarterback versus a John Harbaugh who's isn't. But since Mike McCarthy got fired in the middle of the year, and there were so many stories about how Aaron Rodgers doesn't like him or how the message got cold or just so much negative publicity on one versus the other because the other isn't dealing with a superstar quarterback. He's just dealing with Joe Flacco, who he can bench like that. I think that becomes a media world storm. It creates some ideas and perceptions of guys that aren't really representative of what's actually going on. And that's one to pay attention to. John Harbaugh sounds really nice, but keep in mind, this guy's a below 500 head coach the last 4 years of his career. Do you want to bring in a below 500 coach? I mean, he has a lot of good that comes along with John Harbaugh. And I am sorry, I am switching coaches and arguments all over the place. But it's a question that begs to be asked about John Harbaugh. I know a lot of people are excited about the possibility, but I am just concerned about a few things with him. And as I said before, this offseason, really important for the Browns. You can't mess around. Number 4, Bruce Arians. This is the most interesting situation. Now, while Bruce Arians doesn't have the Super Bowl rings and the overall win total that some of these guys have, he does have a winning record, and he does have one thing going for him. If he's available, he's the one guy that didn't get fired to become available. Now, that's going to be another one of his cons. He didn't get fired. He retired, so he's older. But it is also a pro. His message didn't get old in that locker room. People didn't give up on him in that locker room. Now, he has a good enough resume. I mean, any other year, if Bruce Arians was available, we'd be like, oh my God. But since 2 guys who have Super Bowl rings are going to be available, it makes you think twice about it. Now, the second thing is that his plan that he stated publicly would allow for a lot more continuity. Continuity is something that we have looked around at our neighbors at and felt like we've needed for a while. So the idea of letting Baker not just have to learn a new offense, but get settled in to the offense that he is doing pretty well with now is something that is exciting. It would just allow for a less messy turnover for a team that is ending the season at this point trending up. And the third pro, this is a dude who absolutely wants to be in Cleveland, and only Cleveland. And it really means nothing, but you know, it's just nice to hear somebody say that. After years of hearing how Cleveland's a dumpster fire and and Colin Cowherd, and just, you know, it's just nice hearing that somebody wants to be Cleveland. Now his cons, and his cons are very obvious and very concerning. He's 66 years old. If he coaches this team for 4 years, he will be 70. That's really concerning. I don't want to say he can't do it at that age, but what I am saying is that he has retired once, and he is somebody who you could possibly be in the situation you absolutely don't want to be in, to where he coaches you for 2 years or 3 years, and then he has to retire, and then boom, right in the middle of your Super Bowl window, you're looking for a new coach. You really can't afford that to happen. I would love to have Bruce Arians in here, me personally, but I just feel that maybe the window's passed to have him as your head coach here in Cleveland. I mean, we've had 3 opportunities. He's 66 years old now. How long does he want to coach? How long does he want to continue? I know he wants this job in Cleveland like hell, but how long is he going to want to stay? What's his plan for succession? Is that plan of succession going to be something that's going to seem viable in 3 years? Because who knows? We like Freddie Kitchens now, but in 3 years, we have absolutely no idea what we're going to feel about. Now, we're going to talk about our last candidate, who is the guy actually coaching the team right now and doing a good job. Hell, he has 3 wins. He's already matched Hugh Jackson's total in 3 years. And that guy is Mr. Come Get Some. That's Greg Williams. Greg Williams, much like Bruce Arians, you get to bring back everybody. The same leadership, the same team. There's not going to be a lot of transition, which would be good for your rookie quarterback, which would be good for your young players, which would just be a good thing overall. The other positive about Greg Williams is that he has a winning record as a Browns coach. Not something a lot of Browns coaches can say right now. He has shown already his ability to win in that position with this roster, with this quarterback. It isn't as much as a projection as it is with the other candidates. We're going to jump to his cons, and this is why I say Greg Williams has to make the playoffs and possibly make the playoffs and win a game to keep the job as a head coach, because there's just not a lot of things going for him other than he's the guy coaching the team right now and he's successful. No matter how much you split it, turn it sideways, or flip it upside down, when you compare him to the other three guys I have on this video, his resume is unquestionably the worst resume, the least qualified resume. He didn't do much in Buffalo, his one stint as a head coach. He got into trouble in New Orleans with Bountygate. His defenses has been kind of inconsistent. He's not that knockdown slam dunk candidate on paper that some of these other guys are. But again, on paper, when he's had the job, he's done a pretty good job. And yeah, while he's looked really good, you also have to keep the fact in mind that he looks really good in comparison to a guy who is literally the worst head coach ever in NFL history. So yeah, I'm not a fan of black licorice, but if all I've eaten for the last 2.5 years was poop and you offered me black licorice, hey, tastes pretty good in comparison to what I've been eating. So, it's kind of that factor in mind. I don't know why I described it like that, but there's that kind of factor in mind. And the second thing is that Greg Williams is Greg Williams, and his personality is what you know of. He's a yeller, he's a screamer, he's a finger pointer, he's freaking Greg Williams. And the concern is, even when he was a defensive coordinator, there were instances where his messages kind of got old to the team and they just kind of turned on him and he needed to go somewhere else. What I'm worried about is that as a head coach, will the same thing happen with Greg Williams? Because that's a concern. There's a lot to think about when it comes to the Browns coaching search for this year. Will it be the same guy that we have right now? Will it be somebody completely new with an incredible resume? We don't know. The options are amazing, and we have just looked at the retreads. Next week, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell to make sure that you can watch part 2 next week when we go over some of the new faces, the coordinators, the college guys, and we really break them down and see who would be right to coach the Browns. Thank you guys for watching part 1 of this video. Hope you guys stick around for part 2. My name is Quincy Carrier. This is Worst Take. Nobody's full of shit this time, but thank you for watching, and thank you for getting this channel to 2,000 subs. Less than a month, guys. It's amazing. Thank you guys so much. Keep hitting that like button. Keep hitting subscribe. And tell me what you think of some of the retreads that we talked about in the video. And let me know if there's somebody you think might become available that's a retread that you would be interested in. And tell me why you would be interested. Again, guys, thank you for watching. My name's Quincy Carrier. Thank you for watching this video. Have a great day.